Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to talk about the new moon in Leo, and as you can probably see from the title of this video, it's a bit of a mixed one. So I really like a new moon in Leo because, Leo is ruled by the sun, okay? So it's super masculine and the sun is all about positivity. It's a luminary, and of course the moon is also a luminary. So I also find this to be I just like it together, I could give you a bit more of a technical explanation, but my simple thing is that I just like it. Leo is also, it rules the heart as well. So everything is passionate. It's great for a new start. I always love new moons in Leo because I think they are great for manifesting, for getting a vision board or a Pinterest board out and really seeing the big picture of things as well. However, there are some aspects to this particular new moon which make it a little bit more difficult, hence why I've called it Cruel Intentions, like the film. So this moon is actually taking place July 24th at 2 degrees. So that is the very early stages of the first decan of Leo, which is actually a bit more Saturnian. So that gives us a bit more of a harsher lesson, or a bit more strict. And of course, we have to also remember that we're contending with Mercury stationing retrograde in Leo as well, which is making communication very difficult, but it's making it difficult because people are taking things the wrong way. So when somebody says something to you, it's going to be taken much more to heart. You're going to be like, whoa, you're really, you're assassinating me as a person. And it's like, it's just because that Leo element and that heart and that sense of, weirdly masculinity, it feels sort of fragile almost. So it feels like you might want to keep certain things to yourself during this new moon, especially when it comes to intentions, because people are just not picking up what you are putting down. So 2 degrees of Leo in the first decan is characterized by what I call unsatisfied desires. Okay, in tarot it's unsatisfied desires. It feels like you are awaiting an enemy and you're not getting what you want. And this new moon, as much as I was saying, hey, be passionate about manifesting and being, really, really sort of steadfast with your goals, I do think there's going to be things that are stirring in your mind, stirring in your exterior events where you're like, this is kind of blocking me. All the more to basically focus on your goals, right? Because if we were to let external events block us, then what would be the point, right? You can still have a new start with this new moon. It's just there are some more challenges to contend with than normal. Particularly with Leo as well, it feels like the ego and the pride gets in the way as well. So when it comes to arguments and miscommunication, nobody's really right and nobody's coming out here with, a clean face. Everything's going to be scuffled and there's miscommunication all up the wall. It's really giving tantrum energy, or like, what I would say, when I've said this so many times before, but when a child is screaming for no reason, you're like, you're being melodramatic, sweetheart, and you really don't need to be screaming in the middle of a Costco for no apparent reason. So it really feels like Leo does that because it likes a dramatic flair. Ultimately, there's just a lack of balance too. So I really want to talk more about this cruel intentions thing I talk about, because it really does feel like somebody's waiting in the bushes, like an evil intention from somebody that you know, and that you shouldn't be sharing your manifestations with them. I am not saying this is true, okay? I'm not saying that you can't trust people in your life, because I don't want to make you paranoid, because I think we should definitely have people in our life that we can trust. But sometimes, have you ever noticed when you told somebody, hey, I paid this debt off, I did this thing, and they're like, oh, that's great. And you're like, what was that look? I just saw that look, and I don't know what that is, but I saw that look, or they give you that smile, like, what does that mean? I had a friend that does this, and he used to smile like this. I'm like, what was that? It's just my smile. I'm like, wait, it's not your smile. Something's going on. You don't agree with me. So sometimes that can be the intention where you're like, okay, and it doesn't have to be negative. It's more that people just worry for you, or they don't necessarily give you the gusto and support that you're looking for when it comes to, a new plan or a manifestation. So you could just be sort of feeling like, maybe I have to be a bit more quiet. Leo is very loud as well. So if you don't have the supporters, maybe you shouldn't be, projecting it to everybody. Again, I find this to be an odd dichotomy, because I think that people should take up space and people should, say things. But I also do think there's a place in the universe for us to be keeping certain manifestations quiet. And I think when we have aspects like this, with astrology, we probably should be quiet. The biggest thing and the reason for all of this negative intentions, I should probably say, is of course because the Sun in Leo is opposite Pluto in Aquarius, which is very manipulative energy. It's downright bad luck. So it does feel like, you know, things can be said and unexpected things happen where you're like, oh, I didn't know that you really didn't support me on this situation. Again, because it's quite manipulative and because Mercury is retrograding in Leo as well, there can be some really sort of like, there's a lot of negative intention there. Also, let's not forget that we have Mars in Virgo conjunct the South Node in Virgo as well, which really feels like you are getting very precise about removing certain things from your life that don't serve you anymore, or particularly things where you think there might be bad intentions for you. I really feel like this aligns to my life right now. It feels like, oh, you know, South Node in Virgo really representing the letting go of perfection from your past, but of course Mars in Virgo being very pernickety about that in a sort of motivated way as well. Venus in Gemini is also squaring Mars and Virgo as well, which is very flirty and fun and exciting. I always say Venus and Gemini is like the talking stages of a relationship, and then Mars and Virgo squaring is basically like these two don't get along because Mars and Virgo is trying to be more precise and basically dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and then Venus and Gemini is the hookabout, doesn't care. So these two don't go too well together. So that energy can give mixed match as well, where it's like, I just don't really understand what is going on here. It really feels like whatever I'm saying, you are not getting me. You're not getting my side at all. So I do think this new moon in Leo, although I think it's, you know, we should focus on the positive when it comes to, you know, having a new plan, I do think there might be big room for miscommunication, manipulation, and generally a feeling that not everybody is on your side. So if you're interested to know how this is going to affect your rising sign specifically, then watch on. If you're an Aries rising, this is in your 5th house, dating, creativity, and children. So you can have a new start pertaining to that. However, I would just say with the dating element here and with the manipulation and bad intentions, be careful about who you're going out on a date with if you are, or any kind of communication that's not sat right with you. Call it out, be like, I don't really like what you said there. And, you know, I do think that with Mercury retrograde in Leo, there's always that room for miscommunication, but I do think with this negative intention element with the Sun in Leo opposite Pluto in Aquarius, it's going to grow like a you know, like a virus in the mind, and then you're just going to end up, you know, resenting it. So especially if it's an early stage of dating, of course Venus in Gemini right now as well, cut it off and say, yeah, I think you should adjust this, not the best. If you are a Taurus, this is in your 4th house of home and family, so it could be manipulation from a family member, but also a new start when it comes to the home, and something new when it comes to maybe, you know, at the back of a miscommunication or an argument or something like that. You can then grow the relationship with a family member. If you are a Gemini, this is in your 3rd house. This is always difficult because, of course, you're ruled by Mercury, and so Mercury retrograde in Leo is always difficult because it doesn't sit right with you at all. And because it's in the 3rd house as well, there is a big, you know, margin of error for you when it comes to having miscommunication or feeling like you're being manipulated. However, it's also a good new start for writing a new project, getting very passionate about that project too. If you are a Cancer, this is in your 2nd house of income and finance and diet. So this is a great time to start maybe a new diet or a new kind of like healthy living lifestyle, and maybe also starting a new stream of income or something along those lines. I'm feeling very passionate about it, especially if it's to do with a hobby or something more artistic as well. However, again, room for error here when it comes to miscommunication about money, especially when it comes to money that you share with other people, maybe feeling like people don't have the best intentions for you, and maybe thinking, hey, you're not 50 quid that you owe me. Where is it? If you're a Leo, then this is in your 1st house of self. This is your new moon. So of course, Sun in Leo and new moon in Leo as well. What I will focus on the positive here with this new moon is that it will highlight the passionate energy you have for your own goals and for your own sense of self and identity. And I think that is really quite lovely. However, because it's your 1st house of self, because that deals with perception, you might be open to more attack from people or more negative attentions from people as well. So just be more mindful of that. If you are a Virgo, this is in your 12th house. This is quite potent for you again as well because you're also ruled by Mercury as well. So communication is not the best and you might feel a little bit one foot on the ground and one foot off. Again, Mars is also in Virgo and it's conjunct that South Node in Virgo as well. So you particularly might feel for your own personal sense of peace and identity that you need to get rid of things that just don't serve you. In your 12th house of mental health as well, you might feel like this is, you know, there's a little bit of paranoia here, maybe like a downright, oh, I've got a subconscious feeling that this person was never going to be the right person. And it's also a house of manifestation as well, so it's also really good for new moon. I'm trying to balance it here with positive and negative because if I say something super positive, then people will be like, hey, you're lying. And if I say it's negative, people are like, oh, I never get any good news. And it's just like, Life is about balance, unfortunately, folks. Like, it just is. One day shit, another day's not. It just is what it is, you know? If you are a Libra, then this is in your 11th house. So this is particularly potent when it comes to manifesting a new and creative energy with friends and doing something exciting, and especially getting involved in your community as well. And we should also focus on the fact that, you know, we also have, in the very far distance, not really affecting this new moon too much, that we have Saturn and Neptune in your 7th house of committed relationships as well. So focusing really on the people and bonds in your life as well. But you might want to be careful about manipulation and potentially some, you know, negative intentions from friends as well. Weed people out a little bit. Again, use that Mars conjunct the South node to kind of focus on that. If you're a Scorpio, this is in your 10th house of career and responsibilities and parenthood. So this is a new start with a project at work, perhaps, or taking on a new level of responsibility that you didn't have before. And of course, that's really challenging. It gets you feeling creative. You feel kind of more invigorated. But again, you could also have a negative intention from somebody else at work, perhaps, who wanted that project and now is like, got it out for you, or some kind of feeling where it's like, okay, I'm like, I'm sorry I took this from you, but I kind of did better. So deal with it, basically. If you're a Sagittarius like me, then this is the 9th house. So this, obviously, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, which rules the 9th house. So this is very like potent for you. Again, there could be some, I wouldn't say negative intentions, but I would say just like some resentment when you talk about your lifestyle, you're traveling, studying, basically living a life, or maybe having a conversation that's a bit more philosophical and, you know, a bit more spiritual. People just don't get it, and there's room for miscommunication, and you perhaps getting quite defensive, because Sagittarius can get very defensive, especially over their own beliefs and desires. So there is an element of that as well. However, you could also start a new project for studying as well. Maybe book a new trip. I just booked a trip to Australia. So there is an element of a new start here as well. If you're a Capricorn, then this is in your 8th house. So this is a little bit more of a room for negative intentions, because the 8th house is a tiny bit more hidden. So it can be a little bit more like, oh, okay, what's going on here? There's also room for, you know, great energy when it comes to finances and income and transformation. But again, at the same time, there could also be some manipulation in those elements too as well. So always focus on the manifestation of, you know, having more money, having better investments, you know, having a better and stronger intense bond with somebody, most emotionally and physically as well. If you're an Aquarius, then it's in your 7th house of committed relationships and contracts. And this is quite interesting as well when it comes to, you know, the fact that you are maybe manifesting a new relationship or a strengthening of a relationship, especially if you've had miscommunication with that relationship. But of course, Mercury retrograding in Leo is really keeping you from focusing on that too much, because you might be like, I'm sticking my mind about the negative, and so I can't manifest because whenever I do, I'm focusing on the negative. So this is a really good chance to tap into your sister sign Leo and the passion and the vigorousness, you know, the vibrancy of Leo, and really use that main character energy to manifest a relationship, regardless of any people who say you shouldn't be with this person, they have negative intentions for that. Fuck them, basically. And finally, if you're a Pisces, this is in your 6th house of physical health, co-workers, wellness, responsibility, duty, yada yada, all that. I feel like I like yada yada. Basically being able to manifest something new with that, start a new plan, especially quite regimented as well. I think this will coincide quite nicely with Mars being in Virgo as well, giving you a little bit of boost in that area. And also, let's just be very open and honest about the fact that you could have a little bit of a miscommunication or a bit of a scuffle with a co-worker who does not agree with what you have to say, and then you're like, oh really, I'm just a friend of a convenience to you, aren't I? What's going on here? But again, always focus on the positives here. So I've given you a bit of a rundown here, and I'm trying to be both positive and negative and saying that yes, this is a new moon where you can use it as a new start and you can manifest it. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is aspects of this moon that are causing issues, like I said, tantrum, bit of a lack of balance, miscommunication, and generally feeling like, who's that in the bush with a torch, you know? So just be mindful of that as well. If you're feeling just a little bit not quite right, you know that song, Somebody's Watching Me? Feels a bit like that, to be honest. But not in a like, oh, I'm watching you because I'm like looking out for you, but more like waiting for you to trip over kind of thing. And it's just like, yeah, not gonna happen, buddy, not gonna happen. So if you enjoyed that video, then please give me a like or a nice comment or whatever you feel like doing, and I will see you for my next video, which will most likely be the August horoscopes. Bye.